This is Scale Her Up, the podcast for female-led businesses ready to grow to seven figures and beyond. I'm Dr. Brenda Hector, business coach and champion for women in business, on a mission to change the stats and help more women scale successfully. Each week we share real stories, tools and tactics to help you build a business that supports the life you want. Follow the show and come and join our Scale Her Up Facebook community. You don't have to do this on your own. And that's a perfect message, actually, as I introduce Liz McAreavey, who is the Chief Executive of Edinburgh Chamber of Commerce. Liz, thank you very much for joining me.
My pleasure.
So let's not start with the Chamber. Let's start with your experience as a business owner. If you can maybe just talk me through your journey as a founder and growing your business, just briefly, and then we'll dig into that a bit more.
Well, I'll try and keep it tight because, it was a long time ago. So trying to remember all those years back. But I came to Edinburgh to study. I studied accountancy and I didn't get a grant, so I needed to fund myself. And so I set up cooking flapjacks and cookies and things like that from my student flat and selling them to local delis. I kind of just enjoyed it, and it was just a way of making extra money. And then eventually I ended up buying one of the delis that I supplied to. It was in little cobble street in Edinburgh, and people were in and out, the smell of the coffee grinder and the salamis hanging, and just discovered a love of food that I didn't really understand at all as I was growing up in Wales. And so it was something that was quite accidental. I ended up buying this little deli sandwich bar. The recession of the early 90s happened, and so instead of having queues down the road, because we were one of about two in the whole of the West End at that time, I ended up taking my basket of sandwiches around all the different office blocks to sort of go out to the customers rather than wait for them to come to me. And I suppose that started what I didn't really understand as networking, because I would stand and chat to people as they were buying their sandwiches, get to know people, and then they would say, oh, we've got a business meeting, could you do some sandwiches for us? Oh, we've got some important people, do you think you could do a buffet for us? And actually, just by accident, the business grew and grew and grew. So eventually, it was 16 years of absolute hard graft until we were turnover 7 million turnover. And we were the largest independent caterer in Scotland. So, I had what I called my leisure business and my prestige business. So leisure was, we had racecourses, football stadia, we did the Royal Highland Showground and the Royal Highland Show. So, there was the leisure. And then the prestige, we did a lot of work at the castle. I was the first contractor to operate the Royal Yacht Britannia. So we did the fit out of the Royal Yacht Britannia. We were the first caterers. We did the Royal Highland Show, the Royal College of Physicians, surgeons. We had Glasgow Royal Concert Hall.
It's a call coming in. My phone should have been silent. That's really embarrassing.
No, not at all.
Here we go. How professional is that on my podcast? Yeah. Sorry.
No, you're okay.
I will cut that part out. And if you just go back to one of the places you were listing, and then we'll just keep going from there.
Okay, so yeah, we then had the Royal Yacht Britannia, which we fitted the kitchen out, and we were the first contractors. That was really exciting doing that, and I was amazed that we won that. But that's a whole new story about how we actually managed to get that contract. But we looked after the Royal College of Physicians, Royal College of Surgeons, Edinburgh Castle, the National Museum of Scotland, and the National Galleries. And then we moved into Glasgow, and we had the Glasgow Royal Concert Hall, the Glasgow Science Centre. We had theatres down in Newcastle. So it kind of grew a bit too big for me, because I felt that I was someone that liked working with my colleagues. I went from having about 5 people, when we started up, and you knew all their kids' names and their birthdays, and suddenly I had 150 staff. And, structuring a business through the growth. I always say, you take your profit sabbatical. It's the year where you actually stop being kind of an idiot trying to make things up as you go along, to stopping and thinking, right, if we work late in the office, just use the company credit card to buy pizza. And, there was no financial controls in the business. The suddenly realizing you need purchase orders and you need invoices and statements and you need a structure and you need a management team and you need all these things that you didn't know anything about when you started. So it was definitely a learning curve from being somebody who was hugely enthusiastic and good with people. And I was very good at winning business to suddenly having to manage that growth. So, there were some challenges along the way. And
So
then we did manage to exit.
so it was a big learning curve then through the years.
Yes.
What was the biggest thing you had to learn?
I think because I'm a very trusting person, I gave a lot of trust to people. And actually, I was never let down. I was extremely lucky that few people didn't live up to the trust I gave them. But trust can go so far, and then you need to have systems and processes and structure and controls because there are 150 people, and they need to know boundaries and processes and systems. So understanding how we need to structure the business, what controls we needed to put in place. There was one thing going out and winning business. You then needed the logistics team to deliver that business. You needed the kitchen to create the food and the menus. You needed the waiting staff to turn up with immaculate white shirts and white aprons. We needed to train them properly. We sometimes, one of the biggest things we did a lunch for 2,000 people on the pitch at Ibrox in a marquee, which required 2 kitchens, staff, everything down to the last pepper pot had to be there and, coordinated and delivered on time. The one thing about catering, it teaches you deadlines because, if lunch is to start at 1, you can't say, I'm sorry, we're going to be like an hour late. That's when it starts. So it does teach you good planning, thoroughness, but making sure you've got the right people doing the right job and the right systems in place. So that was a big learning curve for me.
People, getting the right people. It seems to be a recurrent theme in a lot of the interviews that I do. How do you make sure that when you've gone from 5 people to 150, how do you make sure they're the right people?
Well, I think I was lucky, but I also think if I was to say what's my big skill in life, and I think it's just understanding people. And also, I'm a nurturer by nature. So I like to see people grow and develop. I think that's the one thing that gives me the most fulfillment through that entrepreneurial part of my life, but to my current job. I've got a fantastic team around me. And I think it's because I can instinctively tell within 2 minutes of meeting a person whether they've got the right attitude. I think you can give skills to people, you can train
Yeah.
people, but whether they've got the right culture, the right soul, and the right attitude, that I can tell. I seem to be able to figure that out quite quickly. But I also like to see people develop. So some of my team that started with me and started the business really growing, I always like to say we weren't necessarily world-class individuals, but we came together to be a world-class team. And
Oh, I
so
like that.
so
Yeah.
some people, like we had this great waiter. His name was Richard. He was French. He was very charismatic, and he was a part-time waiter. And we needed a sales manager. And I just said to him one day, "How do you fancy being our sales manager?" And he says, "Oh, I don't know anything about sales." I said, "Just be yourself. Just answer the phone, take the booking, go and meet people." And he eventually, from being a casual waiter to being the sales manager, I eventually put him through an MBA. He became a master of wines, and he now has his own wine importing business.
The
So
nurturer. Yes, just
so
nurturing that
to me, that's
person.
fantastic,
Yeah.
and that happened time and time again with people who joined the team. One Muriel was just a brilliant people person. So she became my trainer, and she made sure that every member of staff, if they were part-time or agency, felt they understood what we expected of them. They turned out, we eventually got the whole uniforms and we got them laundered and we handed them out because it was important that we presented ourselves the way we wanted people to understand who we were and what our brand was. And so people constantly raise the game. I remember one of the most important things that we learned was we were doing a big dinner at the National Museum of Scotland, and we had about an hour and a half to turn it from a museum into 200 people for dinner. But there was one time, and of course we were in the days of the silver service. People won't understand what that is, but it was trays of food and you go around and you serve everybody, and it was all a bit of a rigmarole. So I used to say, why can't we put restaurant food at these large banquets? Why can't we just beautifully present a plate of food, put it on the table? Well, you can't do that. And eventually I said, well, what would we need to put in place to be able to do that? And then the chef said, well, you'd have to do this, and you'd have to have this piece of equipment, and you'd have to do that. And I said, well, you've just given me the answer. So, it was about thinking about things differently. So we were probably one of the first caterers in Scotland to serve what I would call restaurant food at these big banquets. And it was just because you challenge the norm and say, well, what would you need to do to make something like this happen? Because people will give you all the reasons why you can't. You just got to ask them, what could we do to make it happen?
So it's about the way that you ask the question, isn't it?
Yeah.
Rather than why can't we, it's what would we need to do?
Yeah.
Then you come up with a solution rather than
Well, they came up with the solution.
Yeah.
The staff know better than you because they do it on a daily basis. They know what would be required. So it's about listening to them and involving them, in the whole process. So we were a team, we just built a really good team. And of course, you're young and you're fearless and you don't have anything because you're young and poor. And so you've got nothing to lose. So you're willing to kind of just do what you need to do, really.
So was that your dream when you bought the deli?
No, never in a million years thought that would happen. I trained as an accountant, but I realized that I wasn't very good at it and I didn't particularly enjoy it. And, I'm not somebody who likes routine. I do like to try new things. So as I say, I was a bit of an accidental entrepreneur, really. And it was quite hard going, and I'd sunk quite a lot of money into it and borrowed money. So when it was really tight and difficult, you can't walk away because you're too vested. And I think sometimes it's the really challenging times that keep you going, because it would just be too easy to say, oh, this is difficult, I'm going to go and do something else. You can't. You literally cannot. And I'm sure a lot of women find themselves in that position. They've committed investment and time and resource, and it's just not easy to walk away. And it shouldn't be easy to walk away because you've got to test yourself. And it's the difficult times that make you realize what you're made of.
That's when you grow, isn't it?
Yeah. And it's cliche to say that in many ways, but it is absolutely true. You do not find out who you really, really are until you dig deep, and you just got to stick at it. And then you come out the other side and it's like, wow, that was amazing.
So let's talk about the other side then. Building a business to that sort of size and then selling. So you said that you felt that it wasn't right for you any longer. So did you make a decision to sell, or were you approached by a buyer, or how did that work?
Both. We'd won a lot of contracts that were for 5 years, so there was a lot of value in those contracts. I felt it was a good time. Also, I'd been doing it for 16 years. I was exhausted, and I did sort of think, well, what else might I do? And at the same time, there were a couple of interested parties that approached me, and it just felt the right time to think about what to do next.
So if somebody's listening is thinking, I've got this business, I'm scaling it up, I'm going to have to, well, I would think that you should be thinking about your exit. Always be thinking about your exit. What are you aiming for? What would be your advice to somebody that's thinking of that sort of exit?
I don't do it the way I did it, because you don't really maximize the value. I think look at where you are in the market, look at who your competitors are, look at the time frame to get yourself ready, because what you want to do is really strengthen your balance sheet. You want to tidy everything up. You want to make sure that you're optimal. And I think I would probably say get some good corporate advisors on board as well, because they very often know who's in the market looking for an acquisition. So I think get some professional advice and make sure that it might be 18 months out, 2 years out, but give yourself time to get your balance sheet and get your business in good shape. And that's when you'll get your maximum value.
And that's really great advice. Thank you. And I'm also thinking about the day, like the day after, the month after, whatever. Was there a bit of a, oh my goodness, what have I done? Or, or were you excited for the next phase when you,
Well, it was extremely sad. In many ways, I felt I'd let the team down, although there were a number of buyers, and the one I eventually did the deal with was somebody who needed our contract, needed the team. Some of the bigger multinationals would have consumed the contracts into their existing operation, and they probably wouldn't have needed the team.
yeah,
So there is a bit of loyalty when you're making these kind of decisions, that I wanted to protect the people and make sure that they had continuity going forward. So it was important. I did a bit of an earn out, but I realized that culturally it was very different. So you go through financial due diligence, you'd go through legal due diligence when you're going through a sale. What few businesses do is cultural due diligence. And the acquirer had a very, very different culture to the one we had. So sadly, funnily enough, most of the management team were gone within 6 months anyway. So it is about that cultural fit, to make sure that the people that you're leaving behind, you have that continuity.
yeah.
It was tough. Yeah, it was tough. And Joe, interestingly, there's still a Facebook page. And I sold in 2001, so 20 odd years later, there's still a Facebook page with staff still keep in touch and still talk about the heydays.
Oh, that's lovely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Really nice I look back on it as very, very formative. I set it up when I was about 23. So I was kind of early 40s when I moved on. So it was very, very formative time.
I'm sure. Yes. And so that's given you skills that you've taken on. Then you moved on to corporate role. Is that
So
correct?
I went back into professional service. So I joined Deloitte as, by this stage, in order to grow the business, I joined a lot of women in business groups, the entrepreneurial exchange. I joined the board. Scottish Enterprise, if they wanted to have a female speaker, because back 30 years ago, there were not that many women doing things. So I did speak at events a lot. So I had a massive network. And so it was really, how do I utilize this network? So I quite enjoyed a business development role because I was good at winning business. So I did that at Deloitte for a couple of years. Then I got headhunted to Ernst Young, and they were looking for, they wanted market leadership in the UK. So they wanted a director of market leadership strategy. And so what I'd learned through my business and growth and through Deloitte, I then took on this strategic role, which is really, really interesting. And I like to simplify things. So if you're looking at market leadership, what does that mean? And in very, very simple terms, it means you've got the best clients, you've got more of the best clients, and you've got the best people. That's it.
Yeah.
And then you just break that down into how do we deliver those 3 pillars. So I did that for a number of years. And then the opportunity to join the Chamber of Commerce came along. And, working for big firms like Deloitte and Ernst Young, you've got world-class insights and support and people. And it's, an amazing experience, but it's high pressure, high pace. These are brilliant people. And I just felt, again, it wasn't where I was comfortable. I like to be somebody who's making a big difference. So I prefer to be a big fish in a small pond than a small fish in a big pond. And you get caught up in it all. But I just took a step back and thought, am I happy? Am I fulfilled? Is this really what I want to be doing? And then the opportunity came to join the Chamber of Commerce. And I thought, actually, I can make a difference here. I can really help shape how this organisation affects the city, supports businesses, and what better job could you have?
So let's talk about the Chamber of Commerce then. For anybody who's not familiar or not engaged, 'cause there might be some. What does the Edinburgh Chamber of Commerce do for the businesses in the city?
Well, first of all, before I go on to that, I would say join your Chamber of Commerce, because I don't think people fully understand what we do. So I always think there's two elements to, again, I like to break things down really simply. There's two parts to what we do. We need to support businesses and help them grow, help them to connect, help them to find new clients and leads, and help them develop their thinking and their ambition and take them internationally. So anything that helps a business succeed and grow, that's what we're about. And we can do that in a number of ways. But what's really, really important is businesses can only be successful if the environment in which they operate enables that success. So lobbying or engaging with the city council, local government, UK government, Scottish government, and making sure that economic policies help businesses. And we've gone through years of not having a business-focused, ambition for economic growth. And we've done a lot of work trying to engage with ministers and government to say businesses are the driving force of any country,
I
because
totally agree. Yeah.
what we want is good communities and strong societies. How do we do that? Well, we have to have good public services supporting communities and society. How do you fund public services? Well, it's by creating wealth, jobs that pay tax, that create strong economies. And so business is at the heart of everything, really. And we're strong advocates of fair work and good growth, sustainable growth, responsible growth, and giving something back. So, our experience in Edinburgh, the vast majority of the businesses that we deal with understand that people are their number one asset. They need to look after them. And if they want to grow, then, they've got to recruit the right people, train them, and they want to be around for the long term. And so, so our role is supporting that good growth, but making sure it doesn't exist at the moment, but the tax regime is right, that we've got access to funding for skills, that we're investing in the right infrastructure, that we've got affordable housing, because if people need to work in the city centre, it's very difficult to afford that. Have we got integrated transport system, helping them get to and from work, and that they've got a workforce that can actually go to the place they need to work, that we've got a great airport, one of the fastest growing airports in Europe here, connecting us to 55 direct destinations. So all these things are quite complex parts of the economy, but they're absolutely important that we address them and make sure that we're challenging government. Are they doing the right things?
Yeah.
That's my
So,
long answer.
for somebody who's listening and you're saying join the chamber, what are the benefits to a business owner or from joining the chamber?
Well, I tend to break our members down into kind of three distinct parts. You've got your micro businesses and your SMEs, and they want to grow and they need clients. So they want to meet as many people as possible. A business card is a lead, then, it's a numbers game. The more leads you've got, the more likely you are to convert. So they want events, networking, they want to be connected up to people.
Yeah.
We've got our established businesses who want to be informed about what's going on in the city. So we do business breakfasts, we do round tables, we do training programs. So there's a whole range of activities that we do to connect people and raise their profile in the city. And then you've got your really big corporates, like your banks and your big financial institutions and your big companies, and the airport and the ports, who are vested in the city and they want the city to be successful, because when the city's successful, they're successful. So it's about engaging them with all the policies that the local authority are developing, that government's developing, and making sure that we are representing their interests and understanding what their needs are in terms of infrastructure and skills and workforce, transportation, and then we represent their interests. But they need to engage. It's a two-way street.
Yeah. So you're there for all sizes of business.
Yeah.
Every business can benefit from being part of the
And connecting small businesses to large businesses, because
Yes.
there's supply chains.
Yes.
And, if we can keep, people talk about sort of local wealth creation, if we can keep supply chains local, big companies using local companies, then, we're enabling growth and that wealth creation and creating more jobs locally. And then the money stays. It's great.
So what about, scale her up, we're all about female business owners. So is there a particular focus within the chamber to supporting women in business?
We've got a Women in Business lunch that we have every couple of months.
Mm-hmm.
It is the most successful and well-attended event that we do.
That's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah,
Funny
it is.
that. Yes.
Women love getting together and supporting each other in a way that's very different to mixed groups and male only. Women are very, very supportive of other women. So we've no problem finding female entrepreneurs who will come and tell their story and inspire the people, other women around, well, not around the table, in the room, because we can have up to 100 women in the room. So that's one of our most successful things. We managed to get some Scottish Government funding called Pathways, where we pitched for some money to not help women start up, because I think there's a lot of support for women starting up. We wanted to show them how to scale.
Yeah.
So we developed a cohort of women and we put them through this, how to scale up, how to develop strategies, and it was hugely successful. And, the cohort of women, really built good, strong relationships. And it was so sad when we went for second round funding to continue the program, they stopped the funding. So I know. So we're trying really hard to get more sources of funding. And the other thing we're looking at is that we recognise that there are not enough women exporting.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So the proportion of female-run businesses exporting compared to male-run businesses is tiny. And so we're on a bit of a mission to say, how do we support women-only groups and take women-only trade missions to help women understand, well, have the ambition to export, find their key markets, which has synergy with what their business is about, and then find agents or B2B meetings to help them find either partners or collaborations or routes to market in overseas markets. So I think we run several trade missions, mixed trade missions a year, but I'd love to do it for an all-women group.
I guess I'm just trying to get my head around that. It wasn't something that I realised, but I don't know why it would be a surprise to me, to be honest. But why is it that female businesses aren't exporting? What do you think are the reasons or the blockers or the barriers?
It's risky. It's hard, if you've got it depends, how ambitious you are to grow your business. If your domestic market's good enough for you, you'll do that. But if you want real scale and real ambition, you have to go overseas. And then there's, complexities in terms of documentation, certificates of origin, whether it's a service or a product. It's kind of the risk of, actually exporting your goods. How do you finance the additional stock and, whatever you need. And something that people don't think about is when it goes on a container or when it's being couriered somewhere, when does ownership end and new ownership start, and if it gets lost, who's responsible for it? So, there's a degree of complexity of understanding how to go about exporting, but also you've got to jump on a plane every now and again, and you've got to understand the market you're going to. You can't just say, oh, I'm going to, and also there's cultural change. Your website might need to be slightly different for different markets, have a different message, have a different culture. So there's a lot of cost involved in it.
Yes, I'm
But
just
there
thinking
is,
about that, jumping on a plane, like it's really basic, thinking about your household.
yeah,
Female-run businesses, the females are often doing a lot of the care in the house as well. So actually jumping on a plane and spending 3 weeks in Brazil might be quite difficult for,
yeah,
yeah, yeah,
yeah. So, it's how can we make it work? How can we
yeah,
support it? Because I think Scotland needs to increase its export. It's got an export strategy called Trading Nations. We need to export more. Why are women not exporting more? And what maybe we just need some government support to
yes,
enable women to do that. And we are actually speaking to UK government as well through, DBT, Department of Business and Trade, and coming up with a proposal to say we'd like to support women on the export journey. Can you fund us? Because women can't necessarily fund it themselves. They can't necessarily fund the training or the event, the missions. So let's put a bit of investment in our fantastic women, and let's see how we can just give them that ambition and
yeah,
take the barriers down.
yes. Oh, I love it. That's brilliant. Yeah, good luck with that. I look forward to hearing how that all goes. I'm based in Aberdeen, so I spend a lot of time in Edinburgh. I've got a couple of my kids live in Edinburgh, but I just want just an understanding of the interconnectedness between the different chambers. So is there, do you
Yeah,
come together? Yeah, work
yeah.
together?
I mean, there's Scottish Chambers of Commerce, which is kind of the representative body. Interestingly, chambers are vary vastly. We've got 26 chambers across Scotland, from really small chambers that just do brilliant work in a small location. So just connecting people, sharing challenges, solutions, just helping each other, to the big capital city chambers or the large cities like Glasgow and Aberdeen. We've got a collaboration between the three main cities, and if we can support each other on exporting or messages to government on supporting business policy and economic policy, then that's a louder voice when we all come together. We're also, because we're one of the larger chambers in the UK, we're also accredited to British Chambers of Commerce, and there are 52 larger accredited chambers, part of British Chambers of Commerce. So I get to network with chief execs of Manchester, Liverpool, the Northeast. So we're engaging with other chambers in big cities. And what we've realised is Scotland needs to up its game. We lack a real common ambition and a unified voice. Edinburgh particularly, when you see what's happening with the mayoral combined authorities, and you've got these mayors like Andy Burnham who are absolutely selling their cities, inward investment, skills, occupiers of big, developments. They've got a 10-year, £10 billion local growth plan and ambition to invest in infrastructure, skills, housing, transport, innovation. And they're telling a great story. Edinburgh is the only location in the whole of the UK that has sector skills in each of the 8 priority sectors in the industrial strategy. So Edinburgh has got such a diverse economy and sector strength. Out of all of the cities in the UK, we are the only location that has sector strength in all 8 sectors. We just don't tell our story.
Don't shout enough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Edinburgh's just overtaken London as having the highest GVA per capita for the first time ever. So fantastic assets, expertise, and sector strengths. Why are we not getting industrial strategy funding? Billions are going to the mayoral combined authorities, and we're not getting that investment. And we need it if we're going to grow our businesses and have success. So again, that's one of the big things
Big focus for you for Edinburgh
we've
now.
developed. We've initiated what we called a call to action. So we're setting up a business leaders group, and then we're looking at where's the growth going to come from, where's our key sector high growth potential, and what investment is needed to create jobs, take the startups and scale them into unicorns, and create the jobs and the wealth that create a better society for all of us. So it's as I say, I couldn't think of a better job to do, really.
Oh, sounds awesome. Yeah, yeah. Very jealous of you. So for my listeners then, or for the women who are looking to do that, start up to unicorn or anywhere in between, what would be your nugget of advice for them?
It's not easy, but my goodness, is it fulfilling? And I think women are really strong and resilient. And you'd be surprised how you just keep on going. Just keep going. I've got some really good friends who've set up businesses and they have been through some tough, tough times, but they're still going. And how they've grown and developed and become people they never imagined they would ever be. And it is a journey, and you just give it your best shot. Seek help, reach out. I've always had a mentor,
Mm-hmm.
because you don't know what you don't know. And very often you make it up as you go along. Particularly entrepreneurs, you don't go to school to learn how to be an entrepreneur. You need to be a problem solver. You need to be resilient and tough, and you just keep on going. But also understand, you don't make it harder for yourself. You don't have to be a martyr, and listen to yourself. I mean, I think I've been guilty of pushing myself really hard. The older I've got, I've learned, do you know what? Take a bit of time out. Just be kind to yourself. And if you make mistakes, that's absolutely fine, because that's how you learn.
Yeah,
So just be forgiving of yourself, I would say. Don't think that you have to get it right all the time.
I love that. Be forgiving. I'm writing that one down. Liz, it's been an absolute pleasure. I've kind of run out of time. Is there anything that I should have asked you that I didn't ask? Anything you would like to add to the conversation?
I think just be respectful of your colleagues, nurture people, create the right kind of culture that will help your business grow. I think loyalty in people within your business is absolutely critical, because you can't do it on your own. And going back to that point, we weren't world-class individuals, but we created a world-class team. That's about culture.
Yeah,
That's about people wanting to do well, and do well for themselves, but also do well for the team.
that's my best quote from this conversation. We weren't world-class people, but we made a world-class team.
That's what it's
Yeah,
about. Yeah.
yeah. So thank you so much for being on the
You're
show.
very welcome. It's actually been a bit of a kind of journey for myself, because you forget it. I'm somebody who just keeps going forward, and just sort of thinking about the past again. I thought, gosh, I've just probably missed out a million things that I probably think, oh, I wish I'd said that. But I think that's it in a nutshell anyway.
We didn't have all day, so we
Yeah.
had to just condense it down. But there's so many great things that you've shared there. Thank you so much. And
No,
thank you
thanks
to
very
you.
much.
Thank you to the listeners for listening to Scale Her Up. If you enjoyed this episode, follow the show and leave a review. It helps more female business owners find us. Come and join our Scale Her Up Facebook community to get support, accountability, and connection with other women who just get it. And remember, only 1 in 3 UK entrepreneurs are female. Men are still 5 times more likely to scale their business beyond £1 million in turnover than women. And when we start and scale our business to the same extent as men, we'll add £250 billion to the UK economy and create millions of jobs. Ladies, you can do it, and your business can make a massive difference.